So it is very cool effect from the movie The Terminator, the second one, where you have a machine called T-1000, which is basically a bunch of goop, and there's a scene when he goes through a bunch of bars, and it's very cool looking. And I want to show you how to recreate that in Blender because I think it's pretty cool. So you might be thinking, you know, if you're a giant VFX based YouTube channel with 6 million subscribers, you might be thinking that you can do this with a lattice and then keyframe all the points one by one, or even better, we can actually sculpt the effect frame by frame, you know. But you know, I'm kind of lazy, so I'm just gonna show you how to do this procedurally and pretty quickly, real time. And also I'm going to show you how you can do it with a slightly slower method, which requires actual simulations, but it gives us a very different effect. So I'll show you both ways. And yeah, let's just jump right into it. Here I am with Blender 3.1. I just have a severed head, so get yourself one of those. And while going to the modifiers, first of all, we need to talk about our geometry, because if I see the wireframe right now, what we want for this effect to look good is an even distribution of polygons. Currently, I'm sort of there, you know, they're pretty even, but we can do even better if we just hit this with a remesh. So the remesh, I'll use smooth, and I'll set my octane depth to something like 6. 6 looks fine. This is now a bit more even distribution of polygons, especially around the mouth. And then I'll go ahead and apply that. So the next step is to give this handsome fellow some images. I want him to look like an actual person, sort of. So I'm just going to my UV setup. I will select all faces in edit mode, press Alt and middle mouse button to go into orthographic, and then press U for UVs and project from view. So now we have this face, and of course I need to give him a material. I think he has one by default, but I'll just give him a brand new one, so it's all fresh as soon as Blender. Okay, come on Blender, work with me. So base color, image texture, just to give it an image, and I will pick the most beautiful thing in existence right here. Let's go ahead in the shader, click texture so we can actually see it, and yeah, that's pretty good. In edit mode I'll select all faces, although I will need to go into shader preview, and with all faces selected, while I'm in the UV editor however, I will just scale this until we're there. Although this fine specimen has a very squished head, so yep, something like that. Just get something you're happy with. I mean, this is pretty much the best UV you can get. Yep. You can probably do a better job than me. In this case, looks like a person. It's from both sides. Big brain. Alright, so I'm gonna move back into the main setup, enable the texture color in here as well. And one more thing I want to do, maybe disable the wireframe, maybe give it shade smooth, just so we cannot see all those polygons. And let's talk about how we're actually gonna do this. Well, first of all, let's spawn in whatever it is that's going to be acting as the bars. It's going to be this thing. I'll scale it a little bit. How big do I actually want this? This is fine. Really, I'm eyeballing it at this point. Alright, so I'm going to Control A to apply the rotation and scale. In edit mode, I will select all the versts, then Shift D, rotate on Y, 90 degrees, enter. Okay, there we go. This is kind of what I'm going for. Maybe I'll scale down a little bit more. Control A again, apply the rotation and scale. So what we're going to be using to actually make this effect, and this is really creeping me out, so maybe I'll just temporarily disable it, is dynamic paint. And I won't blame you if when you hear the words dynamic paint, you don't think about deformation of geometry. It's a bit of a weird title, but here it is inside the physical properties. So give that to your head, or whatever you have, and click Add Canvas. So what we want to do is we want to be affecting the vertices. So select vertex, not image sequence. And what we want is in the surface to select surface type displace, which means we're going to be displacing this surface using our brush. Now what is going to be our brush? It is going to be this thing. So again, dynamic paint, but this time instead of canvas we select brush and not brush. Right, and this is pretty much done. We're not going to be touching this anymore, and we're going back to our canvas object. So if I just click play right now and start moving this thing around, you'll see that it is now interacting with our geometry. So I do want to automate this a little bit, so I will key this guy. If I bring out a timeline and press I, to key the location, move to frame 60, and then I'll move him ahead a little bit, and I will once again key the location. And if I play this now, you see it sort of speeds up and slows down at the start. To fix that, I will change it from a Bezier interpolation to a linear one by pressing T inside this window though, and now it's just at a constant speed from the start to the end. So it's pretty cool. Maybe I will shorten this a little bit because I don't want to go through the whole animation every time. And let's talk about how we can make this look better. So first of all, it's currently chopping through everything, and that sucks. What we want to do is soften this up. To do that, inside the modifiers tab, we're just going to add a smooth corrective. So the smooth corrective actually takes a look at the initial geometry and smooths out any errors or sharp edges on it. Alright, the difference with the regular smooth is, as you can see, the regular smooth actually, if I set it up before everything else, I just want to focus on it, actually smoothens everything, like absolutely everything, and as you increase the repeat, it gets a bit wacky. While the corrective only activates when the mesh has been deformed. So that's why we're using corrective, and we want a pretty high repeat, something like 10, and a pretty high factor. But do note that the higher the repeat, the more you're going to actually lose your deformation. So really you have to eyeball this one. Alright, so now if I go to the start, we are now getting something. However, this displacement needs to go back. So to actually have the geometry reset itself after it has been deformed, inside the, what was this called, physical properties, we want to give it a dissolve. So dissolve actually is called dissolve because it's dissolving the painting. Basically, I just set this up to 100 because 250 is a bit too much. And now if I play it, you can see that it's snapping back into its original location after a little bit. However, I think I do have auto smooth enabled. I don't want that. And now it's a bit less glitchy. However, we're not really pushing enough, and to have it push more into the geometry, all we need to do is in here we need to set the displace factor to something higher, like 3. Alright, and now we are getting there. In fact, this is most of the effect. However, there are some issues. For example, if I scroll, if I press Shift Z so I can see the wireframe, you can see there's a lot of deformation here. And we have this max displacement thing, which just kind of cuts that off. And I'm gonna set this to 0.01 and reset, and I will see that it's a lot more controlled. There's no super high deformations anymore, which is what we want. You might need to play with this distance because currently my head is at the scale of an actual human head, so do keep that in mind. Alright, so now here we go, we're getting something better. Now there are some issues right here at the nose, for example, where it's getting really squished together. This is because we have a bit too many polys here, and to fix that we would just need to subdivide. So if I select my object and press Ctrl 2, that will actually add a subdivision modifier with a level of 2, and you can see how that helps out in this area a little bit. However, you would only have this on your final render because otherwise it's gonna be really choppy. So that is one way to achieve this effect. If you wanted to push more into the geometry, you would need to just increase the factor, the displacement factor over here a little bit more, and then adjust the other settings. If you wanted to just clamp a bit quicker, reduce the time, and now it's really clamping down quick. However, if you ask me, this is really not doing it justice. I really don't think this is quite the method you want. First of all, because of this issue, and because in the back you will see that the geometry isn't really sticking to us, while in the movie it actually sticks to the bars. But the plus to this is that it's real time and it works with any geometry, so if this works for you, go ahead. But now let's talk about the other method a little bit. I'm just going to go ahead and delete all of this. So the other way is simply with a what was it called? With a soft body. So add a soft body modifier. So in your physics settings for the soft body, right here you will see the first thing you want to change is the mass. It's a bit too high. This is not really the weight we want per vertex. And the simulation, rather the goal, this is the next thing we want to change, is maximum damping, because damping basically reduces bounciness and jumpiness of the geometry, and if you look at the effect, everything is pretty much like molasses. It's super slow and sticky, so we don't want any bounciness. And over here on edges, we actually want push and pull to be super low, something like 0.02. Basically what push and pull do, well, maybe I can show if I just disable edges and then run the simulation. Of course this is much slower, so you would need to bake it, and to do that we just go into cache. But before we do that, actually we want in the field weights to disable gravity and all forces basically. So now if I just bake about 120 frames, I should see something decent. Let's see how long this actually takes. However, I forgot to give a collision. This guy, we need to give him a collision, because we want, yeah, it's our bars. And for the collision we want no damping and no friction, and the inner must be something super small in this case. Well, the thickness is as low as you can get it. The thickness outer, I mean. Thickness outer is just like a shell around your geometry, which interacts with the soft body, while the inner is the shell that goes inwards. And if we want maximum precision on our collisions, we want thickness outer to be as small as possible, basically. So now we'll bake this, and I'll probably get back to you with the results. Okay, let's see. Yeah, see, we're pretty much there. This is very much the same effect we got last time. However, there's no glitches on the nose, and if you look at the back, the geometry is also sticking to us a little bit, sticking to the actual poles, like in the movie. So that is pretty good. However, what you would need to also notice is that this transition here is very sharp, and to fix that, if you want to soften that up, this is why we need to have edges on with a very low value. The higher these values are, the more this edge will be softened. And I don't want very soft, so I will set it to 0.01 and also max out the damping here as well to 50. And now I'll bake again and we'll see the results. Okay, let's see what's happening now. Yeah, you can see how it's dragging a lot more of those edges with it. In fact, I would probably lower this even more to something like 0.002, just to really soften that up. 0.005 maybe. And if I wanted to drag even more, to drag the geometry inwards even more, that would be our goal, the goal default. So if I increase this default, it will snap back quicker, but if I lower it, it will actually drag geometry inwards even more. So let's bake one more time. Okay, let's see the damage. I mean, yeah, this is pretty much the effect I was going for. You can see if I scrub frame by frame, this is pretty good. At least I'm much more satisfied with this than with the dynamic paint method. One issue is, first of all, these edges here can get really rough. To fix that, again, we'll just subdivide once, and that will help soften them up. But again, you would do this only in rendering, because otherwise it's going to be really waggy. Yep. And another issue is, if I go over here, for example, you see that I'm not really pushing forward. There should be like a wave here as I'm pushing the geometry behind. And in order to do that, we would need self-collisions within the soft body, which is over here. And you really just need to turn these on. You don't really have to worry about these settings too much, but do note that it's super slow. Like, self-collisions are super slow, so definitely only for the final product. But maybe I'll render one just to show you the difference. But I will also like to extrude this up a little bit, just so you see things a little better. And yeah, I guess I'll bake one more time to show you that. A considerable time later, you can now see that right over here there is a bit of a wave going forward, which is what we were going for by adding these self-collisions. And overall, I think the self-collisions just prevent some intersections in more dense areas. For example, over here we also have these waves, which were really more stretches before. So really, you'd want to play around with some of these settings maybe. But I'm pretty happy with this result currently. And maybe we can see it with the... whoa. Okay. Maybe we can see it with the texture as well. Yeah, there we go. Good old Joe. Lovely. And you can see it from the top. I think it looks decent from there as well. And yeah, I really don't know what else to show you. So, thanks for watching. This video is dedicated to my grandma. Aww. It's true. I love her. I love you, Granny. Kisses. I guess also subscribe, like, share, and yeah, don't listen to people on the internet.